So it's quite likely that you are aware that Chapter 91, which discusses the superhero movie, has been released, and oh boy, it's not a good sign when your opening part gets so many things wrong. I talked about it in brief in my review here, but here I want to get a little bit more in depth. It's something that in general has plagued the serialized adaptations of Battle of Gods and Resurrection F, but the problem manifested itself in slightly different ways in every single story. And I'm including the anime in this too. We do not wish to continue to harp on about the same topic, which is the early super animation, because it has been exhausted beyond recognition. It's only worth mentioning that the movies will always be more spectacular than anything you could do in an anime or in a manga, and each and every one of them had a scene that was meant to be visual eye candy, with Resurrection F's one possibly being the one that aged the worst. The art is passable here, but once again, Superhero played a lot with the angles because of the way it was made, which is something that will be significantly more difficult to convey in manga format, because in the movie you could do a whole lot of, ooh, let's spin the camera around and show you what you can do. Everybody is aware of how inconsistent Toyotaro can be. But first, let's talk about how the plot shifted from the movie. Some of those shifts have actually worked wonders in terms of reshaping the story, although admittedly the removal of the bingo dance is a crime that will never be forgiven. Tagoma having a bigger role in the anime and bringing back Ginyu, showing how Vegeta has actually ended up being trained by Whis. Frieza being slightly more powerful, and also including something that was present in the manga. However, not every alteration was an improvement, and one of the most egregious was the inexplicable killing off of Piccolo and the subsequent resurrection of the character at a later time. Due to the fact that Gohan was so weak at the time, this served little to no useful purpose. It was just there to ape what happened in the Saiyan saga. But let's take a look at chapter 91 specifically, and wow, there were some strange choices in this chapter. To begin with, there is something that I had mentioned in the chapter review that I'm going to discuss again a little bit more in detail. Why did it take everyone a whole half of a year to put the pieces together as to what the Red Ribbon Army was all about? That particular puzzle? You would think that at least 17 and 18 would have been interested in getting personally involved with that whole chicanery, and then putting an end to the operations of the army themselves. Either Krillin didn't tell 18 deliberately, or, you know, she wasn't interested. We can always make some educated guesses here, but, you know, even so, if the Krill Dog genuinely knew about the Red Ribbon Army, surely they would have figured something out by now, but we gotta remember, our heroes are not the most proactive bunch they've had previous. But you would think from those previous experiences with the army that they would have been a little bit interested to get something done. And those experiences are more relevant because they weren't to do with the original Dragon Ball series, but with Mr. Perfect Cell. Surely that would have taught them something, you know what I mean? Secondly, I'm curious as to why Krillin had such a hard time keeping up with the pursuit of a car. Why was it necessary for him to get in such close proximity to said car? Surely he would have been able to take flight from a distance and be able to track a car that's going like 40 miles an hour? We're aware that Hachimaru is intended to be a formidable little pest and meant to take down very surprisingly big villains, but even so, that would provide him with more room to breathe and come up with a plan by just being a few hundred feet in the air. And also, I don't understand why Krillin is insisting on using a gun.
Coming soon to ZTV, the Smash It TV series, Krillin with a gun!
Why isn't he able to use a key blast on that car? Surely he could just blow the car up and it'd be done. And even though I'm not an expert on the subject of key projection, it seems to me that attempting to hit an already small target with a bullet is more difficult than trying to hit a wasp with a massive projectile that is roughly the size of your hand, if not more so. Also, Toyotaro, that car, Krillin could easily destroy it with a single punch. It's still Krillin, but you should know that he has gotten stronger since the Saiyan saga, right? Surely this shouldn't be a problem. Surely you're aware that power scaling is not unique to Saiyans, right? This individual competed in the Tournament of Power. He's got something. There is no real reason why Krillin couldn't have stopped the car other than the fact that it wouldn't have been convenient for the plot and then we wouldn't have had a story. Let's just have Krillin make some goofy errors and stuff. No one will care. And I do understand that he may have had orders from Sergeant Nuts. Let's hope her first name isn't D's, let's put it that way. But even so, the Krill Dog's behavior in following the car was extremely inept, and also, he surely should have taken initiative and thought, well, it's the Red Ribbon Army, and I have the means to stop them right now! Ka-choo! But no, he probably didn't want to run the risk of getting fired. Let's talk about the fact that Hero's original motivation has actually changed a little bit, which was not at all necessary. The motivation in the movie was actually kind of good. Yes, he is convinced by the assurance that he will be able to create androids, but Trunks throwing him in jail? I don't know. I suppose it's a continuity quirk, so maybe we'll let that slide for the time being until we see more, but it's still kinda strange. Actually, there are some positive aspects to this change, though. The extended scene that takes place between Piccolo and Pan is very endearing, and it does reveal even more information regarding the nature of their relationship. Now this is the course of action that such adaptations should take. These kind of things are able to give us more in terms of character interactions because they have more time to roll than movies that are maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours long. They've got stuff to do. It's common knowledge also that Pan does look up to Goten and Trunks in a reverent manner. She really does respect them. We're also aware that Chi-Chi is still very much a helicopter mother. That hasn't gone away. And we are also aware that being around Pan brings Piccolo genuine happiness. In fact, it could be argued that Pan and Piccolo get along even better than Gohan and Piccolo did at many points throughout the series. It's actually a good thing. It's a nice touch. Add even more of that, please. On the other hand, the entirety of the exposition was relegated to the cops this time, which resulted in the elimination of Carmine Presents. Why did they get rid of that? It is actually kind of true that this is one of the movie's funnier running gags and actually gives Carmine a personality and differentiates himself from a regular minion. There were a lot of those little character quirks communicated in him playing the music, in him showing those movies, the fact that he has a hobby. Yes, I know the medium can't show these entirely, of course, but just getting rid of them entirely instead of just replacing them with just screenshots and PowerPoint presentations from the cops and then Carmine just talking, you're making the whole experience feel flatter than it should. Also, circling back to the whole Chi-Chi issue here, we ought to have witnessed the two of them being disciplined simultaneously, right, Goten and Trunks? Them being rumbled? Instead, we just got from Pan, Chi-Chi suddenly found out about it. Yeah. Why? If you just close off that Saiyaman plot arc off screen, then the entire previous arc, which felt like it was leading up to a new adventure, was for nothing. That was a waste of 3 months. This is the most important aspect of retcons that the majority of the creators of Dragon Ball Super these days do not understand. Retcons are typically given a negative bashing due to the fact that they involve removing one thing and replacing it with another. They aren't inherently bad, but you need to give it a lot of thought to determine as to whether the thing that you're replacing is actually worth replacing or whether it's just there for the sake of it. Is it going to make your story more interesting before you get rid of what was already there? I mean, sometimes it does. The whole Broly movie handled a significant number of retcons very capably. And while I understand that these are not strictly speaking retcons in the traditional sense, but they're more or less different adaptations, I must say that a number of the expanded scenes in the manga leave a lot to be desired as to their clarity. If you want to expand on Krillin in the story, Toyotaro and Toriyama, don't just put him in there for him to fail right away. What's the point? Instead, expand on him in order to make him more interesting. One of the best things about the movie is that Krillin was there and he did stuff. He participated, he contributed. He actually was there in part to help bring down Cell Max. He wasn't useless. Now though, including him right at the beginning and him failing at the first hurdle, even though he put in 6 months of research as to the Red Ribbon's antics, that's just a hard fail. And that's just on the civilian level too. It's almost like they have no respect for the character. And we do know that Toyotaro does have bias. He loves Gohan and Piccolo and Roshi. They get good favor, whereas Krillin, Yeah, okay, yes, we are only talking about one chapter, but they can still include some interesting things in said chapter. But let's be more specific. There is evidence to support the notion that Jiro is Hedo's biological grandfather. I also believe that the actual superhero novel clarified that even more, but good luck getting a version of that in the West. However, for the time being, this adaptation is stuck in that awkward, straddling over pose between changing the source material insufficiently to make it worthwhile, and changing it too much to make it jarring and alienating. Because if it doesn't result in any changes that are meaningful, then what exactly is the point of covering this? Because even though they didn't cover the Resurrection F movie and the Broly movie, when there is an excessive amount of change, it can be very frustrating, I get that. But dear Kami, after a good experience that was the previous mini-saga, it doesn't really give us much hope for the future of this arc. How can these characters grow in a way that will make us feel more invested in their success? Give us some flashbacks from Hedo's past maybe, specifically the beginning of the Gamma's existence. Like in the movie, They just turned up. Surely the manga, it would have been really good to see their genesis and him, Hedo, remembering his antics with the Saiyaman and thinking, oh yeah, that would be a good thing to add. Maybe even some time with his parents as well, who are now and still anonymous. These are the kind of things that are important to us. We want to see more of Piccolo and Pan, Piccolo and Gohan, Goten and Trunks, and Krillin actually getting something done. Give it to us, please. Increase the part played by 18, who was mostly just there in the movie. But okay, at least she was there because Krillin was invested in it somewhat. Vertical storytelling. Enhance what you already have with the story instead of just making up brand new stuff. Could you maybe provide us with more information regarding Magenta and Carmine, please, instead of just giving them a surname? Maybe you could even show us some Broly, such as a scene in which Goku approaches Broly in the first place and then brings him to Beerus, really elaborating on that. And although it's not a part of the chapter, doing so would actually be something fresh. Why aren't they making the most of this? There are a lot of things that you can do around the movie by demonstrating things to people that would actually be interesting and engaging. Also, we recently had a conversation with our friend Sophie B about how Western and Japanese fans have slightly different expectations from the series, and how it can be difficult to expect that the Triple T will completely appease their Western fan base, knowing that the expectations of their home turf are actually more of a priority. On the other hand, Superhero was developed specifically for Western audiences with a Western soundtrack, and the box office results reflect that. It didn't do all that well in Japan, but in the West it did better. And I have a strong feeling that very few people out there who enjoyed the movie would respond negatively to additional lore. But that being said, I can think of quite a few people who would say no to the fact that Krillin being involved in a car chase that he had no control over was a good thing. And I'm sorry that we need to bring that up again, but the 3 people who were in the car didn't even acknowledge him being there. It was like he was just yet another wasp. Surely Hedo would have had information about Krillin being a Z-fighter and someone of importance. It seems though he was just randomly copy-pasted into the footage and he really didn't have much of an impact. Nevertheless, all jokes aside, it's not the worst reading experience that we've had with the series by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, it's just mediocre. A little bit too mediocre for our liking. There is a chance of something being worth it, but at this point, it's difficult to maintain an optimistic outlook, and Haverock and I really try. We can only really think of one explanation for our sentiment, and that this is just a stalling tactic before some, maybe larger announcements down the road, and possibly new animated content that could run alongside the manga. However, due to the fact that we've been fooled so frequently in the past and baited and switched, we've decided that rather than creating unwarranted hype, we're just going to sit back and wait and see what happens. Thanks for watching.